Welcome to The Creative Shift. My name is Dan Blank, author of the book Be the Gateway and founder of WeGrowMedia.com. Today I want to talk about how marketing is connection. And so often I think that we view marketing as something different than that. We think of it as creating an asset or about putting something out there or getting certain metrics back. We think of marketing as numbers. And while numbers can be a part of the process of marketing, so much more of it is really about this idea of connection between you and one other person. I want to share some stories that I've been thinking about in the last week that illustrate this. So the other day I saw an Instagram update from writer Andy Dennert, and he says, "A few months ago, I started querying literary agents to find representation for a book I'm working on. This week, I've received my fourth consecutive rejection. 4 pitches, 4 rejections. I'm sharing this because when the agent does say yes, I don't want it to seem like it just magically happened. There's a long, sometimes challenging path to that point. Likewise, my book, once written, will seem like it arrived fully formed. But there will be 15 years worth of work there, on and off, false starts, abandoned approaches, anxiety, excitement, revision, rewrites. But this is all the work, and it's the fun part." I just love that for so many reasons. And I think that this is something that we can often feel when we are sharing what we create or we're marketing something. So often we think about the likes that we get on social media, or for you, maybe it's the subscribers that you get to a newsletter, or how many people show up to a reading that you were doing. We might share things that get no interest, and we think, oh, this whole thing is failing. I should stop. I should try something different. This is foolish, or I'm looking foolish. And Andy's giving a very specific focus here, this idea of querying literary agents, but that is the work. And when I interview people on the podcast, I will always look at their Instagram feed, and I'll scroll all the way back to the beginning, especially if it's someone who has a lot of followers. And what I'm looking for is what I always see. Those first 5, 10, 20, 100, 200, 400 posts that, just like you and me, they get no likes or a handful of likes. And you think, wow, now they have, 1 million followers and all of their posts get thousands of likes. But they started where we all start, which is with very little validation, with figuring out their own voice. And this is, as he says, this is the work. I recently shared an amazing interview with author Janae Marks, and she shared her own version of this story. She talked about how she wrote her first book, and she queried about 60 or so agents, all of whom rejected it. None of them took it. And that book, as far as I understand it, is still unpublished. Then she had a second book that she barely queried. She said, I ended up sending it out to a few people, but in the end, I spent a lot of time workshopping it. But I kind of let it go. I realized I didn't like that book very much. Then she wrote another book, and this one was for a book packager that reached out to her. So she wrote that, but that didn't go anywhere. Then she wrote her fourth book. And for that, she queried maybe 15 agents. Then she got her agent, she got an offer. And I always love this kind of story because, think about that. If you'd reached out to 70 people with your best work that you spent years working on, would you then say, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to go to 71, 72? Or would you have stopped at 20? Would you have stopped at 10? Would you have stopped at 30, 40, 50? This is the work. And I think that is something that isn't depressing. It's something to me that's really inspiring, especially when you see people who have done really well to find a sense of fulfillment around what they create and share. Her debut novel, and this is the novel after the other 3 books she wrote are still literally unpublished. So her debut novel did great. It has more than 900 reviews on Amazon. It had starred reviews from all these major publications. It was on all these must-read lists, all of that. And Janae summed it up by saying, sometimes you feel like you're shouting into the void. You wonder, how do you stand out? And it is through that perseverance and that idea of connection to real people. And I think that it's so easy for us to just get wrapped up in the numbers of subscribers, of reviews, of sales, of whatever it is. And it's a good reminder to realize from Janae, from Andy, from other people, that they are experiencing things that seemingly fall flat all the time. And then you keep going. I've sent out a weekly email newsletter for 15 years. It is the core of what I do because every week I get to create something from my experience, something from nothing in some senses, and share it. And it feels, I love that creative challenge. I love that deadline. And I have a lot of subscribers and I love doing it. Yet every week I send it out and people unsubscribe. Sometimes it's one person. A lot of times it's 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 people unsubscribe. Every issue, week after week, for 15 years. And the thing about that is this. I'm fine if people unsubscribe because I don't view it as a judgment of my work is bad. What I view it as is what I think is the reality. These people have a very finite amount of resources. That is a finite amount of time and energy and focus. And for whatever reason, at some point in life, they decided, I'm going to check out Dan's stuff. Maybe they got a recommendation. Maybe they've read my book. Maybe they followed me on Twitter. Maybe they just randomly found me. And they said, I'm going to check that out. And then for some period of time, they got my newsletter. Maybe they read it. Maybe they didn't. And at some point they said, you know what, this isn't what I need right now. I'm unsubscribing. And look, I'm human. I would like to have my subscribers stay subscribed because it makes me feel like I'm serving them. And yeah, I know when there's more of something, that can often feel good. But I'm fine if people unsubscribe if that's their choice, because I want them to make a choice of what's right for them. And I was reminded of this in a really wonderful way the other week when someone emailed me to say, hey, I just unsubscribed. And what they said was this: I just unsubscribed, but I want to tell you how much I enjoy your work. I just started grad school toward my MA in creative writing, and I'm thinning out my inbox in order to stay sane. But I still listen to you every week on your podcast. Now, if I had just seen the metric, one unsubscriber, I could feasibly feel bad. I could say, what was it about that newsletter they didn't like? What did I do wrong? Or what do they expect from me? All these negative things. And that would not even come close to the reality of it, which is it was someone who really likes what I share, is still listening to what I share, but in a different medium. They're listening to the podcast, not the newsletter. And they're making this choice for an incredible reason, which is they're pursuing something really important to them and they want to stay mentally fit while they do that. All things I deeply, deeply support. And that's why it's about connection and not just obsessing about numbers. I was lucky enough to receive a different note in the last couple of weeks as well, which is someone who had reached out saying that they've been reading my newsletter for close to 15 years. This is someone, his name is Charles W. Johnson. He's emailed me, on occasion over the years, maybe 10 times over the years. So very familiar with his name. And it just always brings a smile to my face. It is so profoundly humbling and meaningful to just think of someone having subscribed years ago. And this is back when I worked for a company and he worked at the same company. We didn't work in the same departments, didn't talk, didn't know each other in that way, never met in person. But we knew each other just kind of through the company in that way. And he's just sort of stuck with the newsletter, which is incredible. And it's interesting, if you look at his LinkedIn, you might not know that. It's not that anything specific on his LinkedIn or any huge narrative says, oh, well, of course he subscribes to you. He's got a really fulfilling and complex career in an industry they might not know is focused on writing, that sort of thing. So I said, like, let me ask, why do you keep reading? He said, I keep reading because I not only enjoy it, but I'm a writer too. I have an English degree from DePaul. I used to write a blog with Chicago Tribune, and I always love learning something. And I loved how he adds at the end, I'm from the south side of Chicago. We're loyal to what we like. And again, it's such this personal thing about his identity and his passion. And I'm sort of speechless of how much that means to me. It's just amazing. And the last thing I want to end with is something I received in the mail last week, which was a cassette tape. It was a brand new cassette tape. This wasn't an old cassette that I bought on eBay that's, 40 years old. It was a brand new cassette tape of music. And it was put out by Skeem Richards, who I've interviewed on this podcast. Highly recommend you listen to that episode. And he has a new release. It was in celebrating of his 50th birthday. He's a DJ, and he had a limited release on a cassette. And there's factories that still make cassettes, which I'm sure many, if not most of you, just didn't know that was still a thing. So I got this brand new cassette in the mail, and it's limited to 200 copies, and it sold out very quickly. And it's funny because I get this cassette and I think, wow, this is something that you could think goes against all of this idea of what we think we want nowadays, which is going viral or getting popular on digital media, the thing that can scale to as many people as possible. Here's a physical object that cost, I think it was $15 plus $6 shipping, that there's only 200 of. It's a cassette. It's this, apologies to cassette enthusiasts, it's a very outdated form of media. You don't really go into a store and see cassette players for sale anywhere. Of course, you can get them on eBay and used. There are some extremely wonderful, high-quality cassette players out there that are now collectible and high quality. But it's this unusual thing, especially in the age where you might have, a phone in your pocket with thousands upon thousands of songs, plus all the streaming things, holding a physical object that's analog and is limited. It's got 30 minutes of music or 50 minutes of music on it. It's such a different thing, but I love that. It's this idea of connection. It's how can I connect to my biggest fans in this really special way? And I was just so inspired by that. That's why I had to buy it. It just felt great. I love the fact that it's just something so beautiful about that. It's not just trying to get more random people on the internet to find you. It's looking at the people who are showing support, who are in your community, and you truly seeing them and doing something, whether it's an email or a comment or a follow or a cassette, that kind of honors that kind of deep connection, not just this idea of going wide, but instead going deep in terms of meaning and connection and engagement and even collaboration. So as you consider what you create and share, I would just want to encourage you to focus on the individuals who support what you do and not always be distracted by the crowd or distracted by the numbers of marketing. All right, if you're listening to this, you want to watch the video, you can go to wegrowmedia.com, click on blog and podcasts. My name again is Dan Blank. You can find me on social media at Dan Blank, or as I said, at wegrowmedia.com. Thank you so much for listening until the end.